Welcome to this interview skills webinar on competency-based interviews on the STAR technique. Just a bit about my background and expertise. My name is Brian Vanderwall, and I'm an employment and careers consultant, careers coach, and careers writer. I have over 17 years of expertise in employment learning and skills, and I also hold a level 6 diploma in career guidance and development in addition to my degree. My blog, brianvanderwall.com, provides invaluable insights into careers, employment, learning, and the influence of AI. I've been featured on Yahoo Finance, Go Banking Rates, Loughborough University, Lenza, Best Colleges, UpJourney, and many more sites. Now, before we talk about competency-based interviews and the STAR technique, I want to share some statistics. But the average interview duration of a financial crime interview is about 45 to 60 minutes, although some are longer. Despite the competitive nature, an impressive 70% of qualified candidates do secure positions within the field. So it does highlight and showcase opportunities for those who are well prepared. Over 30% of recent job postings in the financial crime sector emphasize expertise in cybersecurity and digital forensics. With the rise of digital finance, interviews are increasingly focusing on candidates' understanding of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and fintech. Over 40% of employers see candidates with cross-disciplinary skills, emphasizing the importance of a diverse skill set beyond traditional finance. The shift towards global collaboration is evident, with 25% of financial crime roles involving interactions with international counterparts. In regards to interviews and assessments, over 60% of financial crime agent interviews incorporate behavioral questions. So they assess the candidate's responses to real-life scenarios. The use of case studies has also doubled in recent years, providing a practical assessment of candidates' problem-solving skills. Virtual simulations and interactive assessments are also on the rise, simulating real-world financial crime scenarios. To navigate success in financial crime professional interviews, it's important to stay updated on industry trends and evolving interview techniques. And that's, again, why I've shared those stats with you. It's also important to develop cross-disciplinary skills to improve your chances of success in securing new roles. Further, it's vital to be prepared for diverse and interactive assessments. Now, if you're here today and you're not in the financial crime professional field, a lot of that still applies, that you need to be updated on your sector, on your field, on your industry. You need to stay updated on the trends within interviews within your sector as well. And that's something that where you can really benefit if you meet up with an interview coach or a career coach, because they can help you with that as well, and identifying the areas that you need to work on or be aware of. So without further ado, we are now going to discuss competency-based interviews. And within that context, we're going to discuss what they are, why they are used, and how to recognize a competency-based question. So competency-based questions are becoming increasingly popular in a lot of different fields and sectors, and they're featured in a high percentage of financial crime agent interviews. And that's because they allow the interviewer to make an objective and fair assessment of a candidate's experience and the qualities that make them suitable for the job. And in terms of recognizing a competency-based question, the questions will usually start with something like, tell me about a time when. It might be something like, tell me about a time when you dealt with a customer complaint. Or it could be phrased in a similar way. It could be, tell me about a situation when such and such happened, or give an example of a time when, but it's going to start in a similar way to that. So if you hear a question that starts similarly to tell me about a time when, you can recognize that this is a competency based or behavioral based type of question. So what I've noticed from interviewing a lot of people as an interviewing manager, and also from coaching people in interview skills, is that many people find competency based interview questions to be very difficult to answer. And that's where the STAR method comes in handy. So we're going to talk a little bit about the STAR method now, because the STAR method is a tried and tested technique or method that helps people answer competency based interview questions. So first, I'm going to summarize what it is briefly, and then we'll go into each aspect in more detail. So STAR is an acronym that stands for situation, task, action, and result. So like I said, I'll summarize them briefly first. So situation, with situation, you have to explain the situation that you found yourself in. T is for task, describe what task you needed to complete. A is for actions, explain what actions you took. And R is for result, clarify the result of your work. Just by way of warning, it may be less useful for some interview questions, such as strength-based questions or technical interview questions. So don't try to force this technique into every type of interview question. It won't work with every type. And if you try to force it into certain types of interview questions, it won't work. However, if it is an interview question where you're required to give an example, it can be quite suitable for that. So questions, again, that start with tell me about a time when, or give an example of a time when, it can be quite useful for those type of interview questions. When people are nervous, they often give unstructured answers and miss out on key details. And that's why the STAR method can be so useful, because it helps you to structure your answer and it helps to make sure that you don't miss out on those key details. So by using the step-by-step method, you will be able to answer each question in a systematic manner without forgetting the important details. So in relation to the STAR method, asking about soft skills such as teamwork, negotiation, communication, problem solving, and others is especially popular for interviewers. Using this method of answering interview questions can help you to provide concrete examples or proof that you possess the experience and the skills for the job at hand. So now let's break down each portion of the STAR method. So the S in the STAR technique stands for situation. So the situation is about setting the scene or giving a context and background to the situation. When you're outlining the situation, what you're not doing here is saying what your task was. You're not explaining your actions yet, and you're not explaining your result yet. All you're doing is including details of the project you were working on, perhaps, maybe who you were working with, when it happened, where you were, or details of a problem or challenge that you faced. So it's setting the scene, as I said earlier. Now it's this scene, it's this situation then that leads to the task. Now, this might be a task that your manager set for you. It might be a task your manager gave you, or it might be a self-assigned task. And when I say a self-assigned task, an example of that might be, say you were dealing with a customer who made a complaint, and the complaint came to you. So in that situation, it's not necessarily that the manager will have told you to deal with that complaint, but it will be that you have set that task for yourself. You've been proactive. Somebody's come to you with a complaint. You've set a task for yourself to resolve the complaint. So the situation is the complaint. Your task then is to resolve the complaint. So when we're talking about task, this is more specific to your exact role in the situation. So when explaining the task, you need to outline exactly what you did. What was your role? And I'm emphasizing your role and what you did, because it's about what you did, not what your colleagues did. You need to ensure that the interviewer knows what you were tasked with rather than the rest of the team. So T is for task. The A in the STAR technique stands for actions. This is the most important part of the STAR technique because it allows you to highlight what your response was and what actions you took. So you need to talk about what you specifically did. So using I rather than we is really important here. I've seen in interviews when I've interviewed candidates and also when I've done mock interviews with people as a career and interview coach that a lot of people will say, we did this and we did that. But when you do that, you're not really showing to the interviewer that you have the skills or experience in relation to the question that's asked, because they won't be able to distinguish then what you did as opposed to what your colleagues did. And it sounds like you were just being pulled along by your colleagues and you didn't maybe really do much. And even if you did, they don't know based on how you're answering it. So you need to talk about what you specifically did. You can talk about how you incorporated your colleagues into things, but you need to talk about what you did. Otherwise, you won't be evidencing the necessary skills that the employer is looking for. And when you're sharing actions, it's important to share a lot of detail, as the interviewer will not be familiar with your history or your task. What you're trying to get across here is how you assessed and decided to take a certain course of action. So it's not just about what actions you took, but it's also explaining how you decided to take those actions as well. And then the result. The result is incredibly, incredibly important as well. A lot of people miss out on stating what the result was. They might state what their task was. They might state some of their actions, but they often forget to state the result. And that's key because it shows to the interviewer that your actions had impact, that it resulted in something. And naturally, the result should be a positive one. If possible, the result should also be quantifiable. So examples of that, what I mean by quantifiable is examples could include an increase in financial crimes being prosecuted, for example, by 15%, or saving the team time, maybe saving the team 5 hours per week. Maybe you've implemented a new AI tool at work. And because you've implemented this tool, you researched and you implemented this tool, maybe you saved your team 20 hours a week. So that would be a quantifiable result, something very specific. The interviewer will also want to know what you learned from this situation and if there's anything that you do differently next time you were faced with that situation. A lot of people feel shy with sharing what they learned from the situation and if they do anything differently because they feel it will show a sign of weakness, that they have to say, I learned this or I did something different. I would do this different next time. But actually, it's not at all, because if you've outlined very clearly the actions you took, why you took them, and you have a great result that's come out of that, a very obvious and quantifiable result that shows that you demonstrated the skill that was being asked about, then outlining what you've learned and what you do differently is really just added value. It's showing to the interviewer that you're a reflective professional and that you aim to get better every time. So as much as your result was amazing and it was great, as outlined in your example, you're showing that you're driven to make it even better next time, and that when you finish a project or a task, that you think through the project or task and how you can even make it better next time. And instead of that making you look weak, it'll make you look like a stronger, reflective professional. So, to help us understand the STAR method better and how it could be used in a real life example, I've put here this example of a question that might be asked and a situation example of how somebody might structure their example using the STAR technique. So, for this, would somebody be willing to read the example? So I'm going to ask the question, and if somebody would be willing to read through the example, that would be great. So the question is, tell me about a time when you carried out a financial crime investigation. So is anyone willing to read this example from the screen?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
In my previous role as a financial crime investigator at XYZ Bank, I encountered a situation where there was a sudden surge in suspicious transactions within a client's account. The bank had flagged it as potentially involving money laundering activities. Task My task was to conduct a detailed investigation, ensuring that every aspect of the suspicious transactions was thoroughly examined. This was crucial not only for regulatory compliance, but also to protect the bank and its clients from potential financial crime risks. Action. Firstly, I initiated communication with the client to gather additional information, maintaining a delicate balance to not alert any potential wrongdoers. Simultaneously, I collaborated with the bank's internal compliance team to analyze transaction patterns, cross referencing against known money laundering indicators. Action. Utilizing advanced analytical tools, I traced the origin and destination of the funds, identifying any anomalies in the transaction chain. I also liaised with external law enforcement agencies to share relevant information discreetly. Recognizing that time was of the essence, I led a dedicated team, each member focusing on a specific aspect of the investigation. Regular meetings were conducted to ensure a smooth flow of information and to adjust our strategy based on emerging insights. Result. Our meticulous investigation unveiled a sophisticated money laundering operation involving several linked accounts across multiple jurisdictions. We enabled law enforcement to disrupt a money laundering scheme estimated to involve tens of millions of dollars. The collaboration with law enforcement led to the arrest of key individuals involved in the scheme. As a result of our prompt and comprehensive action, the bank not only prevented potential financial losses, but also strengthened its reputation for robust financial crime prevention. Our intervention prevented potential losses exceeding several million dollars by identifying and blocking a series of suspicious transactions. The case was cited as an example of effective collaboration between the private sector and law enforcement in tackling transactional financial crime. This experience reinforced the importance of proactive and collaborative approaches in financial crime prevention. It also showcased my ability to navigate complex situations, utilize advanced tools, and work efficiently with cross-functional teams to achieve successful outcomes in challenging scenarios.
Thank you so much, Nita. I appreciate it. So, in this example, the interviewee clearly outlined the situation they faced, described clearly the task that they had to carry out and why they had to carry out this task, explained the actions that they took in great detail, including how and why they took these actions, and then shared a quantifiable result, outlining what they learned and the skills that helped them achieve that result. So that's a very powerful answer. It's a great way, it shows a great way that you can use the STAR technique to demonstrate that you have the skill outlined in the question that was asked. So just as a reminder of the STAR technique and what it is, so S stands for situation, where you explain the situation that you found yourself in. T is for task, describe what the task was that you needed to complete. A is for action, explain what actions you took. And R is for result, clarify the result of your work. So now that we've looked at what competency-based interviews are and why they're used and how to identify these questions, and also looked at the STAR technique, what it is and how it benefits you, we're going to now look for a moment at how to prepare for an interview using the STAR technique. So first, what you need to do is make a list of the skills and experiences that are required for the job based on the job description. So you should have a job description or a role profile. So you look at that job description and role profile and look at what it states are the skills, experiences, and knowledge components required for the job, and also the duties of the job. On the basis of that, you can list them out. You can list them in a Word document or in a Google Doc and have them as headers. Then consider specific examples of times that you displayed those skills. And within that, reflect on the situation, task, action, and result in each example. So as I already said, that you can write the skills and experience and knowledge components as headers in the Word document. You can now then write your examples under these headers in the Word or Google document and write out these examples. Once you've done that, then read and rehearse these examples several times before the interview so that they become second nature to you, and link them to anticipated questions that you might be asked at interview. Now, sometimes you might come up with an example based on a question that you think you might be asked, and you're never asked that question at interview. However, that same example might come in handy for another question or a similar question where that example still fits with that question as well. So having many examples ready to go will then benefit you even if you're not asked that specific question. Another tip, in addition to looking at the role profile or job description to anticipate questions that way and to think of examples based on the job description, another tip is to look at common competency-based interview questions and try to answer them as well using the STAR method. This is something that I supply to my clients when I work with them. I'll share with them common competency-based questions. We rehearse them together and look at them together. So that's something that I commonly do when I'm in interviews. We're going to look at some tips for answering STAR questions. So the first tip is be specific. When answering a question using the STAR method, be specific with your answer. So general actions such as working harder or results such as things got better or my manager was happy will not impress your interviewer as they're not measurable. You need to be more specific. You need to be clear. The best answers, rather, will give specific numbers or form of quantifiable success to easily prove to your interviewer that your actions had impact. Second, make it relevant. If your interviewer is asking you a question about a specific competency, make sure your answer demonstrates that competency. For example, if the question is about problem solving, share or think about a creative way that you've solved a problem. My experience in working with clients and also as an interviewing manager is I'm amazed with how often you ask somebody a specific competency-based question and their answer doesn't even relate. It's entirely different. So it's really important to listen very carefully to the question, what is being asked? And before you respond, to think, is my response going to address the question? Is my example fitting to the question? Because many people, they go off on an entirely different topic. And if you do that, you won't score any points on that question. Timing. Avoid rushing your answers and speaking too quickly. If you rush your answers or speak too quickly, you might appear unconfident or even incompetent. However, at the same time, you must make sure your answers don't drag on for too long either. Your answer should be about 2 to 3 minutes long, and in that time, you should ensure that only the most potent and relevant information is mentioned. Something I've noticed again, as an interviewing manager and as a career coach supporting people with interview prep, is a lot of people waffle. They're not giving specific actions that they've took. They're not talking about any sort of quantifiable result or what they have achieved. Your amount of time that you have is only about 2 to 3 minutes, and you have to pick the most important and relevant information and discuss that. And that's why, again, if you're using the STAR technique, it helps you because it structures your answer and it helps to make sure you're not waffling. So now we're going to look briefly at interview tips that will help you secure the job. So first we'll look at what they are very briefly, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. So we've looked at what competency-based interviews are. We looked at why they're used. We looked at what the STAR technique is, why interviewers like to use them, how to prepare for interviews using the STAR technique. So now I'm just going to share as a bonus some additional interview tips that you can think about. So 1, practice and prepare. 2, research the company. 3, get ready ahead of time. 4, be on time, and that actually means be early. 5, try to stay calm. 6, show what you know. And 7, follow up. So now going into the detail, practice and prepare. As I've been saying earlier and throughout this session, it's important to familiarize yourself with the job description and person specification. People come to interviews sometimes having hardly even looked at the job description, and that's just poor practice. You need to know the job description well. You need to have used the job description and person specification as a tool to prepare. Now, earlier I talked about a lot about using the job description to think about how your skills and your knowledge and your expertise match. But also, equally, you should use the job description to identify your deficits as well, and to think about how you will address them in the interview situation. Now, if you have too many deficits, you might have to decide and be realistic and say, well, this isn't the role for me. But oftentimes we will have some deficits. So if you identify these deficits in advance and have thought about them and have thought about how you will address these in an interview, then you'll be in a better position to answer when asked about these areas that you don't have strengths in. You don't want to be in a situation where you're caught like a deer in headlights, where you're just frozen because you've been asked about a deficit and you can't answer it. If you've thought about it in advance, then that will help. So what you should do is list the job requirements and match them to your experience, as I've been mentioning throughout this webinar, and then prepare the relevant examples using the STAR method. Providing evidence of your successes is a great way to prove that you're right for the job. Prepare your responses to common interview questions as well. Prepare questions to ask the interviewer as well. That's very important. I have a whole blog topic on that topic a blog on that topic, which I'll share later. Proper preparation will help to alleviate the stress involved in job interviews. The more you prepare, the more comfortable and successful you will be at interviewing. Secondly, research about the company and your team. Go on the company website, research through different sources on the internet about that company, what it's like to work there. Do the employees enjoy working there? Know the priorities of the company, the mission, the values, and the objectives of the company. Also, even understand the company culture and expectations. Not only that, you should go beyond the company and learn about major developments and trends within the field and industry. Because it's likely that you'll be asked questions about the company, why you want to work for the company, what you know about the company, and you're also likely to be asked questions about the industry or sector or field as well. If you don't know anything about their mission, their values, objectives, then it's going to show that you're not interested. It'll give the impression that you're not really that interested in working there. You don't care about them. You don't care about their company. And also, it's even good to look if there's been any news stories about the company as well, as that will show that you are being kept up to date and you're looking into different aspects of the company and developments that they have had within the sector or within their field. It's also a good idea to find out the interviewer's name so that you can build a rapport with the interviewer as well. It's important to be prepared for questions that relate to the following 4 points. So first, the job description. We talked a lot about that, but there's no excuse to not be able to answer a question that's related to something that's on the job description because it's been given to you. So you should look at it. I've already told you how, and anticipate questions that you might be asked. Secondly, questions related to your direct experience. Now, we might feel that we're able to easily answer questions about our direct experience, but again, I'm surprised how often people can't, or when they're asked a question about their experience, they can't think of it in the moment. And that can happen for at least 2 reasons. One is somebody's so nervous in the interview that they can't remember their experiences. They become frozen in the moment. Or 2, they put on their CV or application form or cover letter an experience that they didn't actually have and they just lied about it. And in that kind of context as well, in that situation, it can be difficult then sometimes to answer a question related to your experience if you haven't actually had it. And in a similar vein, your accomplishments. Again, they're your accomplishments, so you'd think it'd be easy to talk about them. But then again, sometimes in the moment, people don't remember all their accomplishments because they haven't thought about them in advance. They're too nervous to think about them in the moment. And that's where you need to have thought about it in advance. And you need to also, again, with this, make sure that you've not lied about your accomplishments, because if you have, you will struggle when you're asked about them. And then in regards to your CV and application form, so a lot of people do get family members, friends, CV writing services to do their CV application form or even cover letter for them, which is completely fine to do. In fact, I would encourage you to do that. Use CV writing services, use other tools to help you improve your chances of getting shortlisted. But if you've done that, you have to know what's on your CV. You have to understand the terminology and the words that are used there. You have to know what experiences you have been put on there and make sure that they're accurate. Because if you're talking about something and you don't even know what it means, but it's on your CV and then you're asked about it, it's just going to make you look not genuine, disingenuous. It's going to make you look like a liar. It's going to be the same thing with the not being able to talk about your experience or accomplishments. It's going to make you look like a liar, even if you've had some of these experiences, but it's just that you can't remember them, or you're not understanding how it's been phrased on your CV. So it's important to make sure that you understand that and can answer questions in relation to that. And then get ready ahead of time. Prepare your interview outfit well in advance, even for video interviews. Also read the interview email carefully and follow all instructions. You may be asked to bring something to the interview, to prepare a presentation or something else. And it's really important to read the interview email. And some people don't, and it really catches them out. Prepare your CV and portfolio in advance, and bring water, a pen, a notebook, ID, certificates, and documents to your interview. Be on time for your interview, which actually means be a bit early. If you arrive late for your interview, it's almost guaranteed that you will not secure the job. I'm not saying that you never secure a job. People have secured jobs after being late, but it's usually because they've had an amazing excuse. And I'm not talking about the train shut down or there's traffic delay. That's not a good enough excuse, because it's expected that you plan for that. So aim to arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. It's not a good look to arrive at the location at the last moment. You don't want to be panting and puffing up to the building or arriving the last second. And if you do arrive a bit early, it'll give you time to calm your nerves, to use the restroom, and even check your outfit. And actually, in addition to arriving early to the building, it's a good idea to plan to arrive in the area 45 to 60 minutes early. And that's to plan for unexpected delays. So if you face a situation where there's a traffic issue or public transport delays and you've planned to arrive 45 to 60 minutes early, it is likely that you'll at least still arrive on time. And if you do arrive early into the area, you can always go to a coffee shop before the interview and relax or do final preparation if you wish. It's also important to plan your route and familiarize yourself with the location in advance so you don't get lost and become late because of that. And then if it's a virtual interview, there's also things you can prepare. So what you need to do is you need to download the app in advance if you don't already have it on your device. You should test the app. You should set up the app in advance, and even check what background you're going to have when you're in the meeting. So say you're doing the interview in your home, in your bedroom, you want to make sure you don't have bad signs or something behind, or a messy room. But you can even counteract that by having a background. So normally if you have a background like I have now, if you have anything in the background which isn't professional, wouldn't reflect well on you, it will kind of block that out. But you need to check in advance whether that's coming up so that when you go into the app, you'll know that it's already there. And just in case, you might want to make sure that you don't have anything in the back that's bad anyways. And then try to arrive to the virtual interview 5 minutes early, and be prepared to wait in the waiting room, but come into it early, just like you'd come to an interview early. And then 5, try to stay calm. I recognize sometimes that that's easier said than done, but there are some tips that might help. So some tips are using relaxation techniques. It could be mindfulness or other techniques like that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of mindfulness, but I know some people find it very helpful for themselves. That's obviously something you'd have to do prior to the interview because you can't be doing it during the interview, but it helps people relax, focus on their breath, focus on breathing. Simple breathing techniques can also be helpful during the interview and before the interview as well. Also, if you've prepared well, as I've said throughout the session, you'll be able to display your confidence because you'll feel more calm and you feel more confident. And then you can show confidence even if you are not feeling calm and confident. You can show confidence through your body language during the interview. So things like good posture, sitting up straight, eye contact. If it's a virtual interview, looking at the camera hole in your laptop, looking directly at that can really help. Also, a firm handshake, if applicable. Not always handshakes are done nowadays since the pandemic or for cultural reasons. But if a handshake is done, a firm handshake, also a firm voice can give the impression of confidence and make you feel more confident as well, even if you're not feeling confident. The expression fake it until you make it really applies here, and it can work. Your nervousness will not be always as obvious as you might think. And then focus on your breathing throughout the interview. It helps to give oxygen to your brain. It helps you to feel more relaxed. Remember the importance of staying composed. 6, show what you know. And this is where all the preparation that we've been talking about throughout, the research of the company, the preparing for the questions comes in handy. Because then you can apply your knowledge of the company and all that into the way that you answer the question. So you can showcase your preparation and the knowledge you gained and your unique selling points into your interview answers. In fact, you combine them. You showcase your knowledge, combine that with of the company and their needs, combine that with your unique selling points and how they relate to the company's needs, and that will produce answers which will really possess, that will really impress, because you will have aligned your experience and your accomplishments and your achievements with the needs of the employer. So that's just a little tip that I can give you, which will have a huge impact. Illustrate your expertise through your star examples and emphasize all your relevant skills during your interview. And finally, follow up. A lot of people forget this. A lot of people don't do this, but send a thank you note within 24 hours. If there's more than one interviewer, try to customize your notes for each interview. It can be sent by email. It can be sent by letter. Nowadays, it'd probably be email. But customize notes for each interviewer, reiterate your interest in the position, summarize key points for from the interview, and if relevant, include any additional any additional details that you might have missed. On my website, brianvanderwall.com, I blog about careers, employment, learning, and AI. And 2 blogs in particular in relation to today's topic, which you might find especially helpful, is I've done a blog entitled 132 Job Interview Tips for 2024, How to Do Well in an Interview. I've also did a blog about 70 smart questions to ask at the end of an interview. Now, you're not going to ask 70 questions at an interview, but remember I said earlier, you must come prepared with questions to ask. So these give different questions that you can consider choosing from based on the type of interview you're going for, or questions that you feel comfortable asking. And it outlines some examples of questions you can ask and why those questions might benefit you in an interview situation. But then from those 70 examples, there's 2 or 3 that you might pick to ask at an interview. As I've highlighted from the beginning, I am a career coach and an interview coach. I help people with executive coaching, coaching for career change. I also do interview coaching as well. And actually, I provide other services as well, like CV writing and cover letting writing, LinkedIn profiles, and other things. So if that's something that you would be interested in getting help and support with, email ciag@brianvanderwall.com or fill in the form on brianvanderwall.com/contact us. So, and then we can discuss what your needs are and fees, kind of the cost and fees and other things. I would also like to highlight my website and socials. On these sites and socials, you can access a lot of free tips and information. So I'd encourage you to go on them, to find me, to like, to subscribe, to share. You can share with your friends. In fact, I encourage you to share my posts and get the word out there to other people that might benefit from the information I'm sharing as well. And it's on there for free. So I'm especially active, of course, on my blog, on my website, and then on LinkedIn, where I also have a weekly LinkedIn newsletter that you can subscribe to, and on Twitter and Instagram as well. Those are the ones I'm most active on, but I'm also on Facebook, Pinterest, Medium. If you need help with any of this, contact me at brianvanderwall.com/contact-us. I provide career coaching, interview coaching, CV writing, cover letter writing, enhancing LinkedIn profiles, and more. Further, you can access free information at brianvanderwall.com. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'm here to help. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. Make sure you like it, share it, subscribe, and tell other people about it. Thank you very much.